Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parco. This is ACES53. Normally here with Brian Galkey on Thursdays when we have our Joker, but he's traveling today and having some technical issues, which, we don't normally have. So we'll give him that. But our guest, let's bring in our guest. We'll get going. We're even a little later than we normally do. So let's bring in our guest today. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
How you doing, Ed?
Good. We've never met. So will be a brand new thing, almost like when I'm doing my regular podcast. And if Brian shows up, we'll bring him in. Dan, what do you do for a living?
Boy, that's a little bit of a tough question. The answer is I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like being pinned down, and so we do a number of things. There's some real estate involved. I own a cybersecurity company that focuses primarily in the chiropractic space, and we also have a Radio Shack dealership, believe it or not. And yes, before you ask the question, they still exist.
Online or actually a brick and mortar?
No, we actually have a brick and mortar here in Pennsville, New Jersey. There's 450 of us in the United States, and we do a lot of things beyond Radio Shack type things. But that is, we have all the typical components and things like that Radio Shack used to have. But yeah, it's cool. We get to do a lot of electronics repair and just different things like that our team serve well.
Wow, because I haven't seen a Radio Shack, I don't know, for 15 years where I'm at.
Yeah, most of the corporate stores had closed, but yeah, you're going to see the brand revive with a vengeance here real soon in the United States. I won't go into all that and take up time with that, but yeah.
I mean, as a kid, I totally remember that's where you would go. There was no other place, but then the other things come out. All right. So we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks is niching down and knowing who your perfect client is. And that is why Brian wanted you on the show today. Because I'm real big on it. I've talked about it a lot because it takes a while for people to finally figure it out and do it. And then it's scary for most people because they're going, I'm losing all this business. I'm going to lose all this business over here and all this. And if I just niche down, what they don't realize by giving your perfect client the right message that you're trying to get to them, how much more busier you can be. And we're not saying you're not going to turn away the other business. That's just going to come on turn of it. So how did you niche down to what you do now?
Yeah, I'm gonna say two things before I jump into that. One, a marketing message to everybody is a marketing message to nobody. So if you're trying to say, hey, I do all these things, and you're a generalist, that's great. But who gets paid more? The generalist surgeon or the specialist? Because they're experts in one thing or two things. Not everything. Not that being a generalist is a bad thing, but at the end of the day, if you can target your message, and instead of saying, I do IT service, I can speak your language. If you're a chiropractor, I could speak your language. I understand all the challenges you have with your business. I understand all of the details you have with your business. I can understand if you say my ISS is not working. I know what that means. I can talk a language that you can't if you're trying to do general IT services.
Gotcha.
I mean, is a simple answer.
Right. It's really, I mean, you say it's a simple, but it's not really a simple answer. But I see Brian showed up. Let's see if we can come to the conversation. Hey, Brian.
Hey, yeah, it's better in the room than it was in the lobby.
Yeah, you're actually moving.
I thought you couldn't get in your room.
Yeah. Oh, I had to pull Karen.
I really need to get on this podcast. I'm going to lose
well played. Before I forget this thought, though, Ed, I want to say this. So he asked me about how I niche down, Brian. But one of the things is, in addition to, sometimes you got to get smaller to be able to get bigger. And you say, I'm going to cut out all this business. Well, sometimes your focus, right? Like your focus, if your focus is everywhere, and I have ADHD, so that's one of my best assets. But if my focus is all over the place, it becomes a problem.
You're messing up the podcast.
But yeah, so those are the types of things that we have to consider, right? Sometimes you got to get smaller to get bigger.
And people are afraid to do that because I can see, I was talking to Brian before we came on the show earlier today, and I was telling him it's scary for people to niche down, because you're like, okay, well, I looked at my pipeline, I only did so much of this. Well, it's because your message is to everybody and you're not getting to the right people you need to. I was talking to somebody on a podcast the other day, and I was asking him, what he was doing. I was telling him, you should niche this down to a bunch of other stuff. And he hit later on, he did a LinkedIn post about how I gave him advice, which is unusual for a podcast host to give somebody advice. Well, it's called helping the brave for a reason. It's not called, let them flop the brave. So.
Yeah, I think you got to be direct. I think one of my biggest assets is, and why people. I just was working with the local township this morning, and the lady, the reason that she hired me is because I am direct,
Right.
and just trying to help them, work through some issues, and the consulting side of the house. Sometimes you got to be direct, call it like it is. I like to say we have really big hammers when the vendors aren't behaving. So,
Brian, you got anything, or did you just freeze? He's frozen.
pretty sure he's frozen. So,
all right, we're gonna get rid of him for now. We don't need him on. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So, how long you been in business?
Yeah, so the cybersecurity business started in 2005. And here's the cool thing. I'll just tell you a quick story. So I started building computers for residential users. And then 2007-8, I started working into businesses and started providing, more of working towards what we call managed services, paying attention to how we be proactive with technology. And so 2008 and 9, 10 started really driving into that world. And then in 2013, and we can get into this more later, but massive relationships happened. And those relationships happened to be influencers in the chiropractic world. And coupled with folks that desired that helped us out from my family from a chiropractic standpoint, and helped us, gain a greater sense of health. They happen to have been chiropractors. And so I'm looking at chiropractors and who have helped my family, and then take that with this, right? So I'm on the mountain hiking and hanging out with a bunch of entrepreneurs in Park City. And another chiropractor who was there with me, I told him I was thinking about niching down to work with just chiropractors. And he says, hey, you should call it techsubluxation.com. And I'm like, that's kind of funny because I just registered that domain name 2 weeks ago. And so for those uninitiated, subluxations are the conditions that chiropractors remove, the things that impinge upon your nervous system that prevent optimal function in your body. And so a chiropractor through an adjustment can remove that and allows your body to function at its highest level. And we all know as entrepreneurs, we need to be on our game.
Yeah.
So that's a very short version of that.
No, it's what we have 30 minutes, so we're good. How long? So you're in business, said 2005.
So we've been working for 21 years
I know, but I'm trying to get at how long did it take you to figure out that you needed to niche down in your business? So that would be about, it was 2005 you started?
About 6 years.
Yeah. So
5 years.
And I think most businesses take a while to figure that out. And if you can figure it out from the beginning, you're going to be so much better off than anybody else. But people don't really look at it. They're like, I want to help everybody, just like you said in the beginning. Well, you can't help everybody. You can, but you're not going to help the people that you really need to get to.
Yeah, there's two things I figured out. One, that a person has to want to be helped. It's like if you're a drunkard and you got to recognize that you have the problem before you go get help. So if you are in a business, it takes some time to figure out that niching down. And by the way, I hyper niched, right? I went real light, real tight. You don't have to niche down to that level, right? You could niche. I could do chiropractic and accountants and manufacturers, like, because maybe I have some expertise in all three of those areas. Like in my case, right, as a cybersecurity company, you don't necessarily have to niche down as tight as I did, but I think the narrowing of the field is important.
Yeah, I think you need to be honest with you, because even myself, I can, what I'd love to do, because I'm a vet, is VA loans and helping vets get into stuff. And that's my passion. But I also, the other side, when they're in their 60s plus and they're running into issues where they have a house paid off and they don't have any money to take care of it, I can then help reverse mortgages when they make sense. And it all has to deal with dignity. And so I'm more niche down on giving people their dignity back.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you. But that's, so again, so I could really, like you said, I could do VA, I could do reverse mortgages. And then my other thing is really business owners. So I'm stuck to where I think I'm focusing only on veterans and veteran business owners is what my plan is for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a wise approach, because your message, the marketing that you put out, the communication, the content you create can be focused on those folks.
Right.
And I think you can help more people who need help.
Right. The only thing I run into, sometimes people don't even think about using their VA. So they come to me from the back channel where I'm asking them, do they, yeah, I have my VA. It should be the first thought, but most people have had it for so long that it's not the same program. So 2 years ago, it changed. So it's a totally different program now. So much better than anything else out there. And that's what they're not hearing. So,
and this is good to hear, because like, we're rebroadcasting on both my Facebook page and on our Unique Electronics Radio Shack page. So folks that are watching this here, if you need help in that area, it sounds like Ed may have some things to be able to provide value for you. I never know why I rebroadcast these in certain places, but it made sense, and you never know why someone's going to see this who needs it.
Well, it should be that way. When you're on someone's podcast, if you're on StreamYard like we use, you should rebroadcasting, because it only allow us on 8 channels, but it allows us to go ahead and say, okay, you can put in yours with ours, but then we're stuck with only 8 channels anyway. So being able to do what you did, which is the first time anybody's ever done this on our show, I think makes a lot of sense.
Something about a technology guy or something.
Yeah, there's
like
something
that.
about it. You're a pain in the butts. Let's see if we got Frozen Brian back. Is Frozen Brian back?
I'm back. I'm now connected to my iPad, which is connected to AT&T, so we should be in better shape.
We'll see. I don't believe you.
I know. I'm untrustworthy today.
All right. So you have anything to add? Because I've been doing this without you.
Well, I don't know what you guys talked about, but did you already talk about the book?
No, we haven't got to a book. We've been talking about how he niched down into the market he's in, which is chiropractors. But we also then talk about his Radio Shack and all that.
Okay. All right. So interesting point about meeting Dan is I met Dan when I spoke at an event full of chiropractors. And Dan is one of those kind of people that,
so was that
in addition to being techie, it was Black Diamond Club. That's right. And then he was actually coming through Dallas, 6 months ago. And he's like, hey, I think there's this really good event that you'd be a good fit for. And he introduced me to some amazing people. So not only is he out there expanding his business, but when he goes places, he reaches out and tries to connect people quite a bit. As a matter of fact, he brought Glenn Morshower, the actor, to the same event. And that is, I'd had dinner or lunch with Ken Walls and Glenn before, but Glenn got to watch me speak and he gave me critiques and kudos and things of that nature. And that never would have happened without Dan. So what I like is he has his lane, he has his niche, but everywhere he goes, he reaches out to people in those areas as well, which is, I think, one of the things that makes him highly successful. And what was ironic last time we met was I was talking about a book I was reading. He goes, well, I'm in that book, right? I'm like, no. So there's an amazing book called The 5-Day Weekend. I think everyone should read it. It's one of those of, instead of having a 5-day work week, what are strategies that you can put in place, real estate, stocks, you name it, that what are things you can do to start building a 5-day weekend instead of a 2-day weekend? And sure enough, lo and behold, Dan was in that book. So Dan, you want to explain kind of why you were in that book?
Yeah. And so this actually is a great question because it ties right back down to what Ed was asking earlier. Hey, how did I niche down? And I talked a little bit about chiropractors and the fact that the name tech subluxation came from a hiking trip with Garrett Gunderson, who was one of the authors of that book, up in Park City. And I was with a chiropractor who said, hey, you should name it this. And I had registered that domain name 2 weeks earlier. But the real name of that game is relationships. One of the things that Garrett taught me a long time ago was that relationships and relationship capital are everything. And the ability to connect people, not expecting anything in return. You're expecting a return, just you don't know what that's going to look like. And so at the end of the day, the ability to connect people with other people, because guess what? You've got to be a great giver. If you and a great receiver, if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur or just as a great human, to be honest with you. And so the ability to give, like looking for how you can help other people, right? Now, Ed, you were talking about niching down and the fact that you can't help everybody. Yes, this is true. So becoming an expert in 1 or 2 areas and helping those people and doing it really well, better than anybody else on the planet. I promise you, there is not a single IT company on the planet that can deliver what we deliver to chiropractors, bar none, period, hard stop. Period. Because I know that space so well. And while there are other IT companies that can serve chiropractors, nobody can do it better than us.
Well, let me add, can I add to that? No one else can do the 9-day VA close like I can. Purchase.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Right?
That's unheard of.
Expert.
Yeah.
You're an expert.
That's unheard of. I tell people I can do a VA loan in 9 days and they go, there's no way. And they bet me.
I didn't have the privilege to serve, so I wouldn't know. But
no, it's any loan I can do in 9 days, but a VA loan takes usually longer for most people because they don't know what they're doing. So,
well, knowing the space, back to what we were talking about, knowing that space inside and out, and knowing that there's literally nothing a chiropractor can ever come to us with that they don't, that we can't help them with, whether we do it in-house or we have a relationship with someone that does. Now, this is being rebroadcast, as I mentioned, on a couple of channels. It's not being rebroadcast currently on my chiropractic channel, but some of the folks on our Unique Electronics Radio Shack are looking at this. The things you need to take away from this are that you can focus your business in a certain area, or if you're in, even if you're just an employee, right? You can still focus and become an expert in an area that can help that company grow and help you accelerate within that company.
correct.
So the book. So I met Garrett Gunderson, and about 2015, I want to say that he reached out to me and said, "Hey, your story. You're somebody who engaged." So I went to every one of his events. I flew to Salt Lake City. I was there. I was engaged. I went to all of his events. I was always present because I wanted to learn. I wanted to break free of my 9 to 5. And I did that in 2011. But without his guidance, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So he taught me how to free up cash flow and things so that I could actually break free of that. And then he took what I did, and by the way, all this was by the grace of God. Like, I couldn't have done this by myself. But he took what I did and actually wrote that story in that book as a case study in the 9-day or the 5-day weekend. So Brian mentioned it to me. I'm like, hey, I'm in that. He comes back, and the next thing I get a text with my name highlighted in that little segment of my thing. So it's pretty cool.
And again, it's a great book, and it's just, I know, that's what I'm saying. It's a really good book. I think everybody should read it. And then again, it's the fact of, you could have stayed, and they mention this in the book, you could have stayed unhappy working for someone else. So not only did you decide to go out, and when people start a business, and like I'm in that phase, you start out being greedy in that you want to try and help everyone because you just think, oh, I need to pay bills. What was the point where you realized, okay, I want to start niching down? And maybe you guys already covered that. But that's what's always interesting to me, because when everybody starts, the first thing is, how do I pay my bills? And so you'll take anything, but it seems like the longer you're in business, the more you can refine who your customers are and who you want to work with instead of just working with anybody for pay.
Yeah. So you weren't on at the time. We talked about this. It was about 6 years in that he did that. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Most businesses don't. And Dan, I didn't want you to have to repeat yourself. But it's important to do that and keep looking to see, because sometimes it might change who you want to work. It's real. Who do you get along with best of all your clients? That's who you should work with. Who do you relate with? Who do you need to talk to? I relate amazing with veterans. I'm very direct. Most people, veterans like that because that's what they want. But, a 21-year-old, 25-year-old doesn't want that. And that doesn't work right for me. So you have to find your client and constantly retool, redesign, figure out if that is still your perfect client.
I want to actually expand on it. Yes, I'm not going to repeat the founding portions of it, but I do want to expand on the fact that whatever you do, you have to love it. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have a job anymore. Okay, and whether it's your 9 to 5 or whether it's your business, you better be doing something that you love to the point where it's not work. So work-life balance is BS, right? There has to be a balance. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can shove all your relationships away, but wealth is not just financial. Wealth is your health. If you don't have health to enjoy the money you have, then what good is it? Wealth is not just if you don't have relationships, if everybody doesn't want to be around you, what good is that? If your kids hate you and all those things. So you've got to pour into those relationships that are most important to you. But you got to love what you do to the point where it's not a job.
I totally agree.
Well, and you're right. Yeah, because when you have a job, having gone through that, you're just told, okay, here's your value, here's it, show up, you'll get this pay as long as you don't screw up, right? But you can't do that when it's your own business, because there's not, until you start building your team, other people that you can rely on. And that's what I think is the hard thing when people transition, is people are used to doing this much of something that's this long, all the different parts, who's doing your taxes, what do you have to do with your paperwork, what do you need to, things that companies used to take care of for people. There's a lot of learning that goes into it. And that's why I agree with you. The work-life balance, when you get started, is going to be way out of whack when you get started, because there's such a learning curve that you have to do that other people did for you as an employee. So I think anybody who's going to ride this roller coaster of owning their own business, they just need to figure out, yes, you can work on what you're passionate about. And that's important, because you're going to have to put in a lot of hours in the very beginning. And then hopefully things streamline out. You can build a team. One of the great books is, what is it? Not Who, How, or Not How, Who. I forget Dan Martell's book.
Who, Not How. That's actually Dan. It's not Martell, but yeah, it's Dan. Mind blank right now. I'll come up with it in a sec.
That was Dan Martell. Okay, but no, it's a good book.
So I heard that differently. I heard that work-life balance. I heard that basically you love what you do, so you're not working a day in your life because you love what you do. That's what I heard.
It's both, and I agree with you, and you're not wrong. Who, Not How's Dan Sullivan, and
Dan Sullivan.
So yeah, so if you look at what you're doing as literally, like, the weekend doesn't exist. I mean, yes, you got to work, but I may work harder in my life than I ever have, but it's fun now. And here's the other thing. You're building a purpose. You're building to your purpose, your why. This is not just because I want to make more money. Like, that's not a good reason. Money is a means to an end. It's a byproduct of value creation. So you're not sitting there just doing it because I want more. More is not a game that you can ever win at. So regardless of the reason that you're driving forwards, it needs to be a valid why. And I coached with Jim Camp, who taught the hostage negotiation to the FBI. He's mentioned in oh my gosh, this is what happens when you're tired. I can't remember the name of the book. Chris Voss's book. Thank you. Yeah, he's mentioned in there. So Jim, Never Split the Difference. That's the one. I coach with Jim, and he always talks about when you go into a negotiation, that there has to be a valid mission and purpose, and that valid mission and purpose has to be set in your adversary's world. And he defines your adversary as your respected opponent. So, you talked about negotiating. Like, you have to go into a negotiation with what you with a purpose set in their world. And I don't think being an entrepreneur or niching down is any different. When I looked at Brian and go, hey, I want to get you more gigs, I want to get you connected with more people, and I connect him with somebody, that's because I want him to grow. At some point in time, I know that's going to come back to me. I don't know how, I don't know when, or what that will even look like. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that I want to connect with people, because guess what? I know that's going to return back to me, not void.
Yeah. And I do the same thing. It's all about the connections. I think it's important to help people, because when you help people, eventually you'll be helped one way or another. And I do it because I was helped so much in my past by people, and I wouldn't be where I am today without those people, mentors, everybody. But in general, when I first met Brian at the event, it was like amazing to see what he could do. And so I've been screwing with him ever since.
He has. My therapist agrees.
You can only take Ed one day a week. I got it twice
That's
a week.
right.
Yeah.
Twice a week. An interesting thing, and I don't know if you guys talked about this before, so if you have, I apologize, but I also like the fact that when Dan just didn't niche down and say, okay, I'm going to be with chiropractors, I know enough, with him going and attending the Black Diamond Club events, it's because he's constantly learning what is his customer learning. And a lot of times people think I understand my customer, but they don't go to the customer's office and see like what, what's going on in their world, what's changing. But he actually goes to the events that his customers go to understand where they're at. Now, he also attends the event he came to in Dallas was for MSPs, right? So people who provide services to companies. So he's growing his own skill set while also going to events to understand his customers better. And I don't know a lot of people that do that. A lot of people go to the conferences, that benefit them. But you were one of the first people I know who goes to the conferences your customers are at to see where they're learning, so that you understand how to better support them.
Well,
here's the other thing.
It doesn't hurt to find more clients either while you're doing that.
No,
Agree.
I mean,
agree wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. But here's the difference. It's a slow boil. Right. You cannot, when you talk about negotiations, your negotiation has to be set in the other person's world. You can't go into a sales call and go, I need more clients. Like when you're desperate, when you're talking about niching down, like you can't be so desperate for the sale that, the greatest negotiating position to be in is the position where you don't need what you're going to buy. Because the more desperate person in the room loses.
Yep.
And that's a tough, let's not gloss over this. It is tough to be starting out and to be hungry and to needing to pay the bills and to turn down paying work because they aren't a fit for you. So let's be real. At the beginning, you might have to take more than just your niche, with the idea that you're going to start expanding into that and becoming an expert to that and growing that base, and then maybe being able to turn down and say no to others. I have a good friend, Tom Lambot, who owns a company called Global Mac IT, and he started out serving lawyers that used Macs. That is it, period. And he grew a great business. And he actually coached with Dan Sullivan, actually. So he grew a great business, and now he's expanded it into lawyers that use PCs and Macs, and now even beyond lawyers. But he went the other direction after the fact, but he started out and grew a great business right here. So there's lots of ways you can handle that.
But he did stick with lawyers. But
he still is the expert for lawyers that use Macs. There's nobody better.
Because we had a question last week. Is there a way that you can niche down too much and be detrimental to yourself?
That's a tough question to answer. I guess. All right. Well, here's a good example. Let's talk about chiropractic. If I had niched down to chiropractic and tried to stay local in my area and only serve chiropractors within a driving distance of me, I would have not been successful. I would have failed because there are not enough chiropractors in this area for who will pay what we charge for it. We're not cheap. We provide a concierge service, a boutique service for chiropractors that want to grow their practices. If you're, getting ready to retire, then you're probably not a fit for us. And we're probably not a fit for you. So, I know who my psychographic and my demographic is. So I had to decide and have the skills to be able to deliver IT services across the nation and not allow a state boundary to be a problem. So there's other logistics that you potentially have to solve. You've got to think through all of those aspects. And a lot of people just launch into a business without testing, without asking questions, without polling. I think it's important if you're going to do that, that you have the right relationships with people that can come alongside of you to help you be successful in that area, and you don't try to go it alone. That's why coaching is so important.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
And back to that commission breath you were talking about. That's, it's a mindset that even if you need the money, you can't show you need the money when you're trying to do a sell. And there's too many people who are just starting out that they can't change that mindset. And you're like, okay, that dude needs this so much. I know a lot of real estate agents who need that next paycheck because they haven't closed the thing in a while. You can tell them how they are at the end, how they're pressuring and everything else. And we all go, oh, they just need their check really bad.
I don't care. I don't care how much you try to suppress that in your brain. I've been doing this long enough. If you're desperate, I can smell it a mile away. You cannot hide that.
Yes, you can. You have to be a good actor. You can be a good actor.
Yeah.
It's
true in real life.
How long you've been in sales. All right. If you've been in sales long enough, yes, you can, because you've learned. But brand new salesperson, no, that's something they can't fake.
I would contend that if you've been in sales long enough and you're worth your salt, you're probably not broke.
Well, again, my worst year is other people's best year.
Right.
So it depends on where you're at. Right. You can be at a level and then things change and you're going, damn, this really sucks to be poor.
Yeah. Creating a business that generates recurring revenue is a really good idea.
It's an excellent idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is the key. That is the one. That's the big thing most people don't think about when they're employees, and let's look at things have changed. Right. But that's what I'm saying. Most business owners start as an employee, but we were taught, oh, go just get a job, work for a company your whole life, and then you'll get a pension. And so that's where the recurring is you gave up your whole life and you got a recurring pension. The minute pensions went away and we went to 401ks, you're screwed because it's just basically like, peace out, good luck with your life, and that's what we're not taught is recurring revenue. But that's exactly it. Cossum is huge on that of don't do anything that's a one-time pay. What's something you can do once and get paid for over and over and over again? And look at the amount of people who have Facebook groups that they keep $59, $97 a month. And there's some study that if you do anything that's recurring under $20 a month, people are too lazy to go and cancel it even if they never use it.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of advocating that we allow people to continue to give us money just because we need it and if it isn't good for them. I think it will return a whole lot better to you and less void if you are straight and honest with people about that. Like nobody likes to be taken advantage of. And think about Comcast or some of these Xfinity or some of these larger companies that will allow you to keep paying larger amounts of money because you haven't called up and gotten the latest deal instead of just reaching out to you. Now they're starting to do that more, but what's in the best interest of people? I'm just going to tell you, you have to have a set of values that you live by, because if you don't, someone else is going to sell you theirs. And so you have to have that. Like our core values, our team lives, knows, right? We are excellent communicators, serve others, do the right thing, be responsible, 100% accountability, no excuses. Like, let's talk about that. Do the right thing. How can I have a core value that's do the right thing if I'm not doing the right thing? So even if it's not in our best interest sometimes, because I come back to, if I'm doing what's in your best interest, I know that it's going to return to me, not void.
in a former life, we would have clients that their contracts were coming up to expire, and we would go back and go, okay, what's the best deal we can give the customer? And finance would go, no, you need to keep them where they're at. And we're like, but if they go to bid, we're going to pay them more, or we're going to lose more money. And they would fight us on it, and then that customer would get upset, go to bid, and we would end up giving them way more than we offered them before that we told them was our best offer. And then what happens is you've blown your credibility with the customer, because like, wait a minute, 6 months ago when I asked for this, you told me, no, you can't do it. Now, only because I want to date other people, suddenly you can. And at that point, your credibility is blown. Your relationship integrity is blown.
You're gone.
It's nuts.
Nuts.
For
For me, integrity is a permission to play value. You don't even get a seat at the interview table if you don't have integrity, or I smell that you don't have integrity. At the end of the day, our core values are what we hire on and what we fire on, and it has to be. You have to be legitimate. Like we all know what it feels like to work with a slimy car salesman. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want that, right? And if there's a point where I smell somebody's not being upfront with me, I'm out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brian. It'll take me a second to get my thought back.
Unfortunately, there are still people who teach sales tactics that are almost bullying, and somebody gives you their objection, you only listen to it, go, yeah, no, I completely understand. Do you have your credit card? Or how are we going to pay for this today? That being taught is probably one of the worst things for the sales industry as a whole, because it's that kind of stuff that ends up on social media, on people giving reviews, and they think all people in sales are that way. Versus if you're really good in sales, yes, you should have answers to help push the person a little bit, because some people need a little bit of pushing. But bullying into buying is not a tactic that I subscribe to at all.
So I was going to say it's very important for people in a company to work at other people's jobs for a couple of days or whatever, to figure out what it is on their side that they deal with. So when they're on the finance side, they understand it. For people in the sales that work in finance and marketing, you need everybody to work together. I interviewed a guy the other day who's an architect who also has a construction company, and he makes his people from the architecture firm go out to the construction company and work a few days a week to understand what they're dealing with. Like, they designed this architect and says the only way we can get to that screw is to get behind this box, and we can't even get there. But they wouldn't have known that because of how they designed it. But if they're out on the place, they can totally understand that for going forward. And I think it's the same in any company. And that's why you have pushback, because they've never walked in the other people's shoes to understand what they deal with.
It's brilliant. I'm I'm also a private pilot and about to be commercial, but I fly for Civil Air Patrol, and one of the things that they make us do before we become mission pilots is become a mission scanner and a mission observer, so we can know what the rest of the people in our aircraft are looking for when they're in an emergency situation. That we know how to operate all of the equipment in the aircraft before we're in command of that aircraft. And so it just allows us to understand what it is. It's the exact same thing, right? It's smart operation.
Yep.
That's what's crazy about so many larger companies. They'll hire people from another industry that they were successful in, and those people will go to, I'll use my old background. They would go and meet with like the warden of a prison, but they'd never stepped foot in a prison, and they have no idea what the technicians had done or what it was like to do all these things. And look, guilty of it. When you reach a certain tier, some people go, oh, I'm too good. But really, if you want to remain successful, what got you there was being in the trenches. And sometimes you need to go back to the trenches to understand what's going on today, because as we all age, what we did is not how it's done today. But yet people carry that mentality of, well, we've always done it that way. And that's a big detriment to a lot of people.
Yeah. If we can go back to one thing that we were talking about earlier, and that is niching. I want to make sure folks listening, they go, okay, that's great. We should niche down, but like, how do you go about that? What do you do? If it makes sense, I'll just give you a couple of points to kind of make it a little bit easier for people. I don't know if you guys know Mike McCallowitz or know of Mike McCallowitz. He wrote a book called Profit First. It's very well known in the space, but he's written a bunch of other books. And one of his, I want to say his second or third book, was called The Pumpkin Plan. And Mike says, same thing, do less to do more, right? He says 80% of the people 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your people. And so like your clients, right? So start looking at the clients that bring you the most joy and the most money. There's probably a correlation there. And then when you understand who brings you the most joy and the most money, then where do those people hang out? Where do they hang out in LinkedIn? Do they hang out on Facebook? Do they hang out on Instagram? Do they hang out at the local, pool hall? Where, if you're talking a local thing, depending on what business you're in, and then one size does not fit all here, but here are just some tips. If you start to understand where those people hang out, then you can start going there, or start, whether that's a digital property or whether that's a physical property where you're hanging out, right? It's the same thing we were talking about before. If I understand that if chiropractic is my niche and my focus, then I'm going to go where the chiropractors hang out, the chiropractors that I want to work with. So that's just one simple tip, is to start thinking about and looking at who are your best clients and where do they hang out, and who do I want to work with more, and then get rid of the duds. Whether they're a dud because they're not a great client because they don't have the same mindset as you, they don't align with you. I have a rule. Like, first of all, you got to be nice to my team. But second, if my team groans every time your name comes up, that's a red flag. I used to have a marketing coach who would say, if I'm laying in bed at night and I'm thinking about you and I ain't sleeping with you, you got to go. If you're waking up every morning thinking about that client, you're going to bed every night thinking about that client, and it's not pleasant thoughts, maybe they shouldn't be a client.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Oh, that's funny.
After today, the most important thing that was said was just that. We talked about a bunch, but if you take anything away from today, take that away. That would be a number one thing to take away from today.
Yep.
All right. We've been doing this for 42 minutes. It's time to go.
Yeah. And I know Dan's got to go to another meeting. I apologize for being late and for going, but I finally made it.
Yeah. We got it worked out, man. Technology is what it is. Yeah. You move past it, you make the best of it.
All right. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, the best way to get a hold of you is that your email there, Dan, that you have on the screen?
So no, Dan, actually Dan at techsubluxation.com will work, or Dan at microent.net. That is the one I use the most. Dan at microent.net.
And if you're a chiropractor looking for help, he's your guy. I mean, you do other
absolutely things. Hands down. Please do call.
That's right. That's what he's looking for. Brian, you want to take us out? He loves
I'll try. As long as I don't cut out. All right. Once again, everyone, thank you for joining us on ACES53. As you know, on Tuesdays, it's Ed and I. On Thursdays, we bring in a special guest who has a talent or skill that we want to share with you guys. So that's why we had Dan McCoy here today. The best way to support us is to subscribe, follow, and share. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you both.
See ya.